All right, I will be reviewing the claim that accelerated climate change is a result of human activity. My opponent's secondary claims are that climate change is significant and is having an impact on all of us. Increased consumption of fossil fuels increases climate change and its effects. Increased population growth also contributes to the increased effects of climate change. My response is that climate change is a natural process of the earth. And all right, so in response to my opponent's first claim that climate change is significant and is having an impact on all of us, the first problem with this argument is that it's vague. It takes no definitive stance on whether or not this change or effects are bad or good, and that's where the controversy lies. So it's true that it has an impact, but it has been historically shown to be beneficial. So temperatures during the medieval warm period, which was about 950 to 1290 AD, were significantly warmer, and they allowed the Vikings to settle in what is presently inhospitable Greenland. And additionally, the period from 5000 to 3000 BC, which is known as the climate optimum, were, according to James Plummer, also had significantly higher temperatures and marked a time when mankind began to start building civilization. So this warmer weather allowed mankind to thrive, basically. And then additionally, according to Dr. Teawood of the Woods Hole Oceanography Institution in Massachusetts, the sea surface temperature was approximately 1 degree cooler during the Little Ice Age, which was 400 years ago, and 1 degree warmer than today, 1,000 years ago during the medieval warm period. And global temperature of 1 degree is a very significant difference. Okay, so for my opponent's second claim was that increased consumption of fossil fuels increases climate change and its effects. So that is inherently assuming that there is an increase of fossil fuel use. And according to the World Bank, which is a massive online data bank, the US in the last 20 years has decreased their fossil fuel emissions by 8%. And furthermore, over 30,000 American scientists have signed the petition by the Oregon Institute of Science and Medicine, stating that there is no convincing scientific evidence that human release of carbon dioxide, methane, or other greenhouse gases is causing or will in the foreseeable future cause catastrophic heating of the Earth's atmosphere and disruption of the Earth's climate. And moreover, there is substantial scientific evidence that increases in atmospheric carbon dioxide produce many beneficial effects upon the natural plant and animal environments on the Earth. And then my opponent's last claim is that increased population growth also contributes to the increased effects of climate change. Okay, so yes, there is an increase in population, but there's no way to effectively determine the effects that it'll have. So there is a scientific consensus that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, and according to archaeologists, humans have been on Earth for 200,000 years. So that's 0.00004% of the Earth's life that we have effectively ruled it. And the first studies of climatology only go back to the late 17th century, and according to Dr. Kurtz, an author of The Ancient Near East, all claims of population sizes preceding the 18th century are imprecise estimates because they didn't keep a census. So therefore, there's no reasonable method of determining whether or not the planet is capable of sustaining a significant population increase. In conclusion, there is historical evidence that climate change is beneficial to society. There is no scientific evidence that the release of carbon dioxide is accelerating the Earth's climate change. And lastly, considering how recently humans have come into existence, there is no definitive way of gauging the planet's capability of sustaining humanity. And that is it.
Okay, the structural stuff is all fine. I think that you've got an interesting argument at the beginning that suggests that the advocate is, not really taking a position about whether or not it's a good or a bad thing, and without taking such a position, that puts you in an awkward situation. I thought that you did a pretty good job trying to thread the needle, so to speak, and argue that there are, in fact, potential benefits to having climate changes that do exist. And then you look at historical examples as a way to indicate that. There wasn't really much evidence on the medieval temperature change. I'm sure that you had some, but it doesn't get cited here. But after that, you're much better at citing the evidence, and I thought you did a pretty good job there. When you make the argument about the 1% variation in ocean temperature and you say that's significant, I'm going, okay, well, then what does that mean for the argument? I think now that you've given us this information, you need to make the claims a little bit clearer. I think that was one of the problems in the first part of the argument, is that you've got a lot of information, but you're not always making declarative claims from that information. I think it was a little bit better on the second point, where you did make some arguments that suggested, for instance, that we are decreasing the amount of fossil fuel use that we use, that it's unlikely that CO2 is going to have significant negative consequences, and that there are, in fact, benefits to CO2 in the atmosphere. You don't really say those things, but the evidence makes those claims, and I think that, once again, you could be a little bit more explicit, but the way the evidence is presented here, that's really what the inferences are. The argument about population growth, I think, combines both an argument that diminishes the significance of the problem, but the bigger argument is the amount of time that we've been here and the amount of information that we have makes it unlikely that we can effectively predict those things. I think that's kind of an a priori argument, something that needs to come earlier in the process, and it might have made more sense if you did that even before you started the argument. I thought you had a very effective summary of the issues at the end of the speech, too, so if I'm just listening to the summary, I think you make a powerful argument to respond to those points there. All right, thank you.